I'd like to call this council and committee meeting to order. I want to acknowledge before we start this meeting that the land on which all of us are situated within our community are the traditional lands of the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee, Mississaugas, of the Credit and the Anishinaabe people, and are subject to the Mississaugas Treaty at Niagara of 1781 and the Between the Lakes Treaty number 3 of 1792. Madam Clerk, the roll call.
All members of council are present, Your Worship.
Thank you. There is no addendum this evening. A couple of very brief announcements. With respect to COVID, I know that the announcements seem to keep getting more and more discouraging, but we need to stay focused on the end. And we all know that the number of vaccinations is increasing, despite the fact that the number of cases are increasing as well. But I want to thank all of those who have been diligently complying with the rules, trying to maintain positive and upbeat during what is a difficult time. I want to thank all of those who have been helping others during this difficult time or trying to support our local businesses. And I want to encourage everyone to be patient, compassionate, and diligent because we will get through this, but we all have to appreciate the fact that this is something that we have to stay together on. Second announcement is that this Thursday is April the 22nd is Earth Day. And I want to encourage everyone to be kind to Mother Earth. If you can, pick up some garbage or debris in the area where you are. If you can, plant trees or bushes at some point, not necessarily Thursday, during the course of the year, and recognize the importance of our environment and the earth on which we live. That takes us to declarations of pecuniary interest. Councillor Butler.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have a conflict with 10 Corporate Services 10.2 reports EDTS-01-2021 as my business does business with the company that's building on that property.
Is that abatement technology?
Yes, it is.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any others? Then there are no upcoming public meetings to announce. There is a public meeting this evening, and this is being live streamed on YouTube and also recorded for public viewing on the town's website following the meeting. To those members of the public who may be participating electronically in the public meeting portion of this meeting tonight, you may wish to put your view on gallery view by clicking the top right corner for speaker's view. Or if it's an iPad, it's on the left-hand side. I also ask you to be mindful of background noise, so keep your device on mute until and unless you are called upon to speak. Participating members of the public will remain in the virtual waiting room via telephone or electronically until they are called upon during the appropriate time of the meeting. This is a public meeting pursuant to the Planning Act, and we will receive background information from a staff member, in this case, Anamika Dilwaria. After she has completed her presentation, councillors will be allowed to ask questions of her if they wish. Then we will ask for the proponent or the representative of the proponent to provide comments to members of council, who again will be permitted to question them thereafter. Following that, I'll ask the clerk if she has received any notifications that were not included in the information report. After that, I will ask if there's anyone who wishes to speak in support of the application. Then after that, in opposition to the application or who wishes to ask questions regarding the application. Is there anything further, Madam Clerk, that I should be adding in here?
No, I think you have it all, Your Worship.
Mr. Butler, you're going to be managing this meeting. Is there anything you wanted to comment about how people can access their devices?
Yeah, you'll be led into the meeting room when it's your time, and you'll be able to unmute yourself when you're brought in. and share your video. If you're using a phone, you'll be able to press *9 to raise your virtual hand when it is your time to speak.
Thank you. So why don't we start the public meeting? Ms. Dilwaria, good evening.
Good evening, Your Worship. Thank you, Your Worship. I'm going to be sharing my screen to bring up the presentation. An application for a zoning bylaw amendment has been submitted by David French, agent for Sunray Group of Hotels, owner of the subject property known as 1485 Garrison Road. The purpose of the application is to allow the conversion of the existing hotel into a retirement home. Notification for tonight's public meeting was provided in accordance with the requirements of the Planning Act by placing a notice in the March 25th, 2021 edition of the Fort Erie Post newspaper. In addition, property owners within 120 meters were mailed a notice of the complete application and public meeting on the same date. This is an aerial photograph of the subject lands as well as the surrounding neighborhood. The subject lands are located on the southwest corner of Garrison Road and Buffalo Road and are located in the Crescent Park neighborhood area. The subject property contains a 4-story hotel, Green Acres, Greater Fort Erie Secondary School, Garrison Road, and single detached dwellings are located to the north of the subject property. Single detached dwellings, Orchard Avenue, are located to the east. Single detached dwellings are located to the south. EJ Freeland Community Center, Fort Erie Town Hall, and Fort Erie Leisureplex is located to the west. This slide shows the current official plan designation of the subject lands. The subject lands are designated commercial. The current commercial designation allows the conversion of the existing hotel into a retirement home. This slide shows the current zoning of the property. The lands are zoned site-specific highway commercial C3 132 in accordance with the zoning bylaw 12990 as amended by bylaw 1995-065. The current zoning regulation allows a reduced westerly side yard, a maximum building height of 4 stories, and site-specific parking space dimensions. This slide shows the proposed development. The applicant is proposing to convert the existing hotel into a retirement home. The existing commercial uses located on the main floor will continue to operate. The applicant is not proposing any changes to the site access. The lands will be continued to access via the existing driveways. No changes to the building height or footprint are proposed. The proposal includes both outdoor and indoor amenity areas for the future residents. The indoor amenity areas include a gymnasium, pool, and lobby, while the outdoor amenity areas include patios located on the westerly and the southerly portion of the subject lands abutting the existing building. This slide shows a requested zoning change. The applicant is requesting to rezone the lands to a site-specific C3 zone to add a residential retirement home to the list of permitted uses. A Zoom open house meeting that was held on March 24th and was attended by staff, owner, and his agent. None of the area residents attended the meeting. These slides show some of the pictures of the site. This is looking at the subject property from Buffalo Road, looking south on Buffalo Road, looking north on Buffalo Road, looking east on Orchard Avenue, outdoor amenity area located outside the dining area, outdoor amenity area located outside the pool area. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dilwaria. Are there any questions by members of council? Councillor Noyes.
Thank you, Mayor Redekop. Knowing how all the different parking lots kind of connect, is there going to be any change to that, from the hotel to the EJ Freeland to the arena? Is there going to be any change at all to accessing those points?
Through your applicant is not proposing any change to the connection between the parking lots. Only change to the parking area would be that they are going to be providing some accessible parking spaces. So that's the only change in the parking area, but the connections would not be changing.
If I can continue.
Sure.
So would there be any purpose to putting in something in the site plan that they can't block off some of the access to the other places or not? Like, I mean, they're not building anything new, but could they not block it off and say, okay, this is just for our use?
You have in mind, Councillor Noyes. Right now, there's only one access point by road. There's maybe a walkway that goes between. Are you concerned about that?
I'm trying to think how I get around. I thought there was also an access into EJ Freeland, if you kind of go through the parking lot.
I think you have to go out, if you're driving a vehicle, I believe you have to go out to the laneway between Buffalo Road and the parking areas. I think you can walk across to EJ Freeland.
Okay. I haven't been there for a while, so you're probably right, but thank you.
Well, Ms. Dewaria, you can correct me if I'm wrong. Is there a road connection?
No, yeah, Wash, maybe I can share my screen again and bring up the site plan. Maybe that would help, Councillor Noyes.
Right.
So are you talking about this access here, Councillor Noyes? I think you're muted.
Yeah. In any event, that's the access to the lane
Yeah,
between Buffalo Road and the parking areas.
that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any other members of council have any questions of Ms. Dewaria? Ms. Dewaria, that open house that took place on March the 24th, how long did that last?
I would say I gave my presentation, the applicant's agent gave her presentation, then we had some discussion, but that's about it. I would say about half an hour.
Because I was a little late and I tried to check into that meeting around 20 after 5 and I couldn't get in and I think the meeting was over. So was the notice for the meeting to be between 5 and 6, or was there no end time?
If I recall correctly, the notice said the meeting would start at 5 p.m., but there was no end time.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
If there are no other questions of Ms. Dewaria, then I'll ask if the consultant or representative on behalf of the owner wishes to address council.
Your worship, I'll bring in two gentlemen here, if that's okay.
Yes.
David and Randy should be able to start your video and unmute yourselves.
This is David speaking. Everybody hear me okay?
We can. Good evening.
Good evening.
And Randy, good evening. Randy Hope. Gentlemen, floor is yours.
I'm not sure if Randy is connecting or not. I don't see him on the screen.
I can see him and I think I just heard him.
Randy, you're muted right now. If you're on a computer, bottom left. Yeah.
There you go.
There he goes. Okay, Mr. Mayor and members of council and staff, thank you for this opportunity to address you tonight. We do not have a presentation. We concur entirely with what Anamika has presented. We did present a number of renderings, et cetera, of the hotel conversion itself. But as Anamika said, we are not proposing any changes to the site whatsoever, aside from designating certain parking spots for accessible access purposes. We're more than happy to answer any questions of council tonight. That being said, Randy, did you have anything you wanted to add?
I think the important part, especially to the mayor, I know when we had a conversation, COVID wasn't a factor in our lives back then. It is today, and we're seeing the hotel industry is running about 10% occupancy. It is suffering during this COVID crisis. I want to rest assured, Council, especially to you, Your Worship, when we had our conversation about the intent, it is still the intent of Sunray Group to actually build another hotel. They currently own the Comfort Inn, and we understand the importance of, hotel industry in smaller communities, holding sporting events, older adults, active centers, making sure that, we entice games and other things to come to the smaller communities to participate. So it is the intent of the Sunray Group to make sure that, we move forward. We're still doing, I know Aaron's been a big asset in helping me work through some of the different sites available in the community, making sure that we look at hotels, making sure that we're communicating with the brand name hotels about what their requirements are, because it's not a matter of just because I'm an owner. I have to, if I'm carrying a brand name, I have to consult with the brand names themselves to be in compliance. The other part I wanted to really stress is with, the older adult community, we want to make sure that they're engaged. And the nice part about this is keeping them active. I mean, we want active living for the seniors, making sure that they have availability to services and other things that are in the community so that they keep healthy and, and live a longer life. And that's important to us. We make sure that we, age-friendly communities are an important part. For 12 years, I deal with age-friendly communities, and I just want to make sure that when we're working with the Sunray Group and all the communities that we work in, is to make sure that when we look at conversions, that the age-friendly practices are there so that people keep active and healthy during their primes of their life.
Thank you. Anything further? Thank you, Mr. Hope, for that. Anything further? Do any members of council have any questions of either Mr. French or Mr. Hope? Councillor Noyes.
Thank you, Mayor Redekop. I'm just wondering about the Bridges Community Health Center there. How is this going to affect that?
My understanding is that that entity is going to remain in place as a tenant. Is that correct?
That is correct. All existing tenants are set to remain in place following the change in use.
Thank you.
That's actually a benefit to your operation, I would think.
Yes, it is, for sure.
Councillor Lubberts.
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor Redekop. Just to look at the new development that you're discussing in our report, it says that you're looking to develop accommodations elsewhere in Fort Erie.
Yes.
Do you have a site in mind, and do you have any timeline as when you're going to move forward with that?
Right now, the latest reports that we're getting from the hotel industry is they're looking at about a 2.5-year recovery because of COVID. If this continues on, that keeps moving the timeline back further. The ownership group does own the Comfort Inn. We are looking at that site. Aaron's been kind enough to share other sites that we could look at, making sure that we can build close to the QEW. I can share that with you. Most of the brand names want to be closer to the QEW for those services that are coming off the highway with day travels and others. We all know how day travel is going right now. It's not very good. Our intent is paying very close attention to the markets, paying close attention to what's going on in the current situation faced in our world today. And we'll be moving as quickly as we can to make sure that we're being fiscally responsible at making sure we meet the needs of the community. As I indicated earlier, right now we're at a 10% occupancy, and most businesses, as you know yourself, are having a very difficult time keeping doors open. Comfort Inn is a site that we're doing some evaluations right now to find out if the Comfort Inn would accommodate a higher building or a building in that area, which we have to look at the hydro lines and other services that are in that area. But as I indicated to you, that Aaron has been so kind as to share other sites, and I continue to have dialogue with Aaron as far as potential opportunities.
Councillor Lubberts.
Yeah, thank you very much. And then as far as the retirement home, have you decided how, is it going to be strictly retirement, or is it going to be like, I don't know how they elevated so that you get different services as you need them? Or is it just strictly retirement?
So it will be a supportive living. So you don't need 24-hour nursing care. You may need to make sure somebody's making sure you get your medication. I know between the region and the town, you are looking at building a new nursing home. We want to be that service that makes sure that they're eating healthy, that if they need certain services at a periodic day, and we'll work with the local agencies to provide services to come in and provide those services. We want to make sure that, well, the important thing is that they're pretty well independent, but they need supportive things around healthcare, drugs, making sure that they get their prescriptions on the right day at the right time, those type of things. But these people are pretty well independent and active.
Councillor Lubberts.
Yes, thank you very much. So if someone moves in, they will have to be somewhat independent, I suppose. But if they require elevated care, then they will have to leave and get the care they need from another facility.
When you're using the word elevated care, at that level, it depends what the elevation of care is going to be required. Some people may need different services. If they get to a chronic state where they are not self-sufficient or independent enough, then yes, and most families do transfer their loved ones to a more 24-hour care service base, like a nursing home.
Okay, all right. Yeah, I just wanted to know, just so if anybody asked, then I have a little bit of knowledge as to what's going to be available. Thank you.
Any other councillors? If not, I have a couple of questions. What will the cost of accommodations in this retirement home, once it's been converted, be on the affordability scale?
Based on the demographics of the community and based on it is going to be similar to most small towns. It's not going to be an outrageous price. As exact number, I don't have the exact figures in my head, but we are making sure that it is an affordable living and most comfortably set to smaller communities. And your worship know where I live at, and making sure that people have the availability to get this service. We don't want to put people out on stranded.
Right, and having heard your hedging with respect to the hotel, which I understand fully in view of the economic times we're in right now, to some extent, we hate to lose a large hotel which has been in the community now for over 20 years. However, we also need living accommodations for retirees, the elderly. What is the impact, if any, of short-term rentals on the hotel business?
There will be actually zero impact right now while we go through this transition. When we see the numbers start to elevate as far as, border crossings being opened and other things, we will be moving very quickly and make sure. The ownership group has said very specifically that they have every intent of building another hotel there, every intent, because the analysis we've done pre-COVID does support another hotel.
You're just not prepared to put that in blood right now.
If you're asking for an undertaking that, we work diligently with the town, we have no problem doing that. We're willing to do what it takes. We do have done the assessments and the reviews prior to COVID. It does show the support there. And we want to make sure that we're not leaving the community high and dry. I come from a small community also, and the ownership group fully supports small communities and making sure things happen there.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And I know this is a challenging time. I'll leave that with Ms. Dolch to give us some advice on how we can best deal with that particular issue. I've had some conversations with her in the past, and I think that we can address that satisfactorily.
Thank you.
Are there any other councillors that have any questions? If not, thank you very much, gentlemen. I'm now going to go to the public and ask if there's anyone who wishes to speak in support of the application, other obviously than the owners and the representatives of the owner. Mr. Butler.
Your worship, I'm seeing no members of the public here. And Mr. French and Mr. Hope, I'm just going to move you into the attendee area, so you may be kicked out for a moment. I just wanted you to hear that. I'm seeing you'll be moved back into the attendee area.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor and Council.
So you don't see anyone in the waiting room, Mr. Butler, but let's ask if there's anyone who wishes to address council with respect to this matter, whether in support or in opposition, or just has questions that they wish to ask.
I'm seeing none, your worship, no hands being raised.
Thank you. And Madam Clerk, I forgot to ask whether you had received any correspondence from anyone after the report was published.
No, I have not, your worship.
Thank you. Then I'm going to declare this public meeting closed, and we're going to move on with our agenda. And we have a consent agenda. There are a couple of reports in that consent agenda. Does anyone wish either of them removed? No, you're prepared to move the consent agenda, Councillor Dubanow? Okay. So that consent agenda package is on the floor. Are there any questions or comments? Councillor Noyes?
Thank you, Mayor Redekop. Just wanted to comment on the Ott Road Bridge replacement. I did have an opportunity of talking to the Director of Infrastructure, Kelly Walsh, and I'm happy to see this project move forward. I understand, hopefully once the contract gets signed and given out, that it will start fairly shortly, and it should only take 2 to 3 months. So I'm glad to hear that. And I'm also glad when I looked at the pictures that it's also going to be making access on both sides of the bridge in the event that we should have sidewalks on our road. So I'm very much in support of this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Noyes. I'm glad that you're glad. Are there any other questions? Councillor Lubberts.
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor Redekop. My question is to Kelly Walsh. Seeing that it shows that we will be accommodated with sidewalks in the future, what's going to trigger putting sidewalks up? Development?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, not necessarily development, but a demonstrated demand for pedestrians. That area of town is sort of on the edge of development right now, edge of the urban area. So in the short term, it won't be development driven.
Councillor Lubberts.
So would that demand come from staff or the residents?
A little of both.
Yeah?
Yep.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Are there any other questions or comments? Councillor, okay, before I go back to you, Councillor Noyes. Any other councillors? No? Councillor Noyes.
Thank you, Mayor Redekop. I don't know if Councillor Lubberts, you probably know one of the reasons that I'm glad to see there's a potential for sidewalks is that there is a large park just past the bridge. And it's the baseball park, and there's 2 baseball diamonds. There is also the playground there, and it's also an access to the, another access to the conservation park. So I don't think development is going to happen there in regards to homes, but I think the use of that road, again, with COVID, it's hard to remember, but during the baseball season, that's a very, very busy road. So I'm just glad the potential is there.
Mr. Walsh, since it doesn't appear there are any other councillors with questions, just dealing with this sidewalk. So currently the sidewalk network ends at West Main Street, I presume, West Main and Ott.
I think that's appropriate, yeah. Close.
So then there would have to be an extension of the sidewalk from West Main over to the Loyalist Park.
Yes.
And it is a large park. It is well used. We are trying to make this a walkable community. Wouldn't it make more sense to be looking at doing that sooner rather than later?
I appreciate your thoughts, Mayor, but right now, I don't think we have the need for a sidewalk. There's not one on the bridge right now. We have accommodated it, as you know, for future. The activities in the immediate area of that park, for the most part, baseball players, they all drive to the game right now. There's not much in terms of cycling or walking to the game. The things we would look for in infrastructure services is pedestrian counts, a petition or something requesting it, a number of mechanisms, addition to the active transportation network.
Okay. Thank you very much. If there are no other questions or comments, then I'm going to call the question with respect to the reports in the consent agenda. All those in favor? None opposed, that is carried. That then takes us to planning and development services. And is that Councillor Dubanow?
I think it is still me, Your Worship. All right. So that then brings us to planning development services now in session. We have no presentations or delegations this evening, but we do have one report on the agenda. PDS 30-2021, that's a proposed zoning bylaw amendment for 1485 Garrison Road. Do we have a mover for that? Councillor Zanko. So that report's on the floor right now for questions or comments from council. Councillor Lubberts, and then I'll go to his worship.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. In the zoning on page 2, third paragraph under purpose, third or fourth paragraph, it says it's highway commercial C3 132. And they want to rezone it to C3 zone. What's the difference between 3C and C3 132 and just a C3?
Ms. Deloria, do you want to answer the councillor's question?
Thank you. So C3 is basically a highway commercial zone, and C3 132 is a site-specific highway commercial zone. And the site-specific provisions are the ones that were regarding the reduced westerly side yard, the dimensions of parking spaces, and the height of the building. So those were the site-specific provisions that are included in C3 132.
Councillor Lubberts?
Okay, all right. So I'm just curious as to why retirement home wouldn't be allowed in the C3 if C3 132 is site specific.
I don't think it does, but I think Ms. Deloria can answer that better than I could. Ms. Deloria?
Thank you. Councillor, what highway commercial zone, that is C3 zone, doesn't allow a retirement home. That's not a permitted use. And C3 132 also does not allow a retirement home. So that is a reason the applicant is coming in for a zoning amendment that would rezone these lands into a new site-specific zone, which would allow retirement home as a permitted use.
Does that clarify?
Okay, all right. Okay,
Excellent.
All right, thanks.
Yeah. Did you have anything else, Councillor Lubberts?
No, it was, the
Okay.
question was answered earlier with the new accommodations.
Very good. I'll move on to your worship.
Thank you. I'm going to support moving this forward. I think we need this type of accommodation for retirees and seniors on the one hand. On the other hand, a little concerned about the loss of hotel accommodations. We've heard Mr. Hope. I've had a number of meetings with him and his group. I'm quite satisfied that their intentions are honorable. I would ask, though, that Ms. Dolch put her mind to how we can solidify as much as possible the obligation that we're expecting in terms of a replacement of the Clarion. Thank you.
Your worship. Do any other members of council questions, comments regarding the report? All right, so I'll call the question. All those in favor? Passes. All right, I'm gonna ask for some guidance for the next part, either from the clerk or his worship, because we do have the mayor's motion. Do you want to deal with that first, your worship, or okay? So in that case, I'll hand the floor over. Actually, I still have the floor, your worship, if you want to present your motion and if you'd like to speak to it right after as well.
Yep, thank you. And the only reason I'm going first is because it's on the agenda. For other new business or inquiries, they can follow for sure.
Oh, perfect.
Okay, so I moved this motion that let me just.
For a minute there, I thought your screen froze.
Yeah, no, my brain froze. One and the same. Just so the motion is that under section 5.0 prohibitions, subsection 5.1 of Schedule 13 to Business Licensing Bylaw number 21705 is amended, which currently reads, no owner shall, under subsection K, operate contrary to any applicable federal or provincial law or regulations or municipal bylaws. That provision be amended to read subsection K, operate contrary to any applicable federal, provincial, regional laws, regulations, or orders, or municipal bylaws, which collectively are referred to as laws, and that to the bylaw be added a subsection L, rent to an individual, so no owner will rent to an individual, where a law referred to in subsection 5.1K prohibits rentals to individuals who are not in need of housing without obtaining valid verification that the individuals are in need of housing. And further, that Appendix 1 under penalties be amended to provide the following penalty. Failure to obtain valid verification of need of housing under should be subsection 5.1L, 5 demerit points, $300 administrative penalty. So if I might speak to that, Mr. Chair.
Please do.
I've requested that, I'm suggesting that this be an appropriate amendment to the bylaw because we are running into situations where admittedly, maybe for a limited period of time when the provincial government imposes a lockdown or there's some other type of restriction on short-term rentals, but we're running into that right now. And the problem is that currently owners aren't necessarily obtaining any documentation to verify the actual housing need, which is the exception to short-term rentals being permitted during this lockdown period. We've run into a case just this past weekend where that has occurred. And so this would squarely place the onus on the owner of the property to ensure that the person who's renting, in fact, has a housing need. And if the owner cannot produce that, that will be an offense. And the people who are occupying the rental premises could also be found in contravention of our bylaw. So it's a tool that will assist our bylaw enforcement people who have been doing a fantastic job with respect to monitoring the short-term rentals in conjunction with the support that they get from EDTS. But I think this is an extra tool that will assist them and will assist us in making sure that the short-term rentals comply with our bylaw.
Thank you, Your Worship. Do any members of council have any questions or comments? Councillor Noyes.
Thank you, Councillor Dubanow. I'm fully in support of this. I think it may be difficult to implement in a number of ways, but having said that, we have to try. I'm wondering what steps are we expecting the owner to take to verify the housing need? Like if someone comes in and says, well, you know, my house is being sprayed for bed bugs. You know, like, what's the expectation of the owner to do?
Do you want me,
Yeah, Your
looking for
Worship.
me to answer that? Yeah,
Yeah.
so if I were the owner and I was being approached with that, I would perhaps ask for the contract where the bed bugs are being sprayed for, or any type of documentation. So it doesn't have to be a specific type of document, but it has to be something that would satisfy the owner that in fact, this is a housing need. And so it could be a wide variety of documentation, but something that would require the owner to take some burden with respect to the matter.
Councillor Noyes.
Thank you for that explanation. And I do hope that people are honest and forthright and you kind of don't. But I can see the owner saying, okay, how am I supposed to do this? Granted, if it's been booked 4 months ago, prior to the renting, there'd be some proof. Perhaps there isn't a housing need, just a desire to take a vacation. My other question is in regards to the renter themselves. Are they not under now some provincial order too that if they are not staying at home, they can get a $750 fine for traveling for unnecessary trips?
I believe that is correct, and but Ms. Dolch may be able to address that because I believe that situation occurred on the weekend.
Yeah, Ms. Dolch.
To the council, that is correct. So we do have that ability to fine under the stay-at-home order. So we have issued some penalties just this past weekend for that offense.
Thank you, Ms. Dolch. Councillor.
That's all. Thank you.
Very good. Any other members of council, questions or comments regarding the mayor's motion? Okay, so I'll call the question then. All those in favor? Passes unanimously.
Thank you.
All right, so that then takes us past the mayor's motion. So in that case, we're back to my apologies, new business or inquiries. Any new business or inquiries for members of council? You're letting me have a quick one tonight, guys. I've had some long ones, so. All right, any questions about the business status report? In that case, I happily hand the chair back to his worship.
Well done, Councillor Dubanow. That takes us to infrastructure services, and that is that Councillor Lubberts?
Yes. Yes, thank you very much, Mayor Redekop. I'll try to be brief. We have no presentations or delegations. Oh, infrastructure services are now in session. And we have no presentations or delegations. We have no reports. And do we have any new business or inquiries? Seeing none. That brings us to the business status report. Any comments or questions? Seeing none. Mayor Redekop, I'll hand the chair back to you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Lubberts. Very efficient. That takes us to corporate and community services, Councillor McDermott.
You're muted.
Yeah, you're muted, Councillor McDermott.
Am I good now?
You're good now.
Thank you. Corporate and community services is now in session. Presentations and delegations, I have none. The first report on the list tonight is EDTS 01-2021, Niagara Gateway Economic Zone and Center Community Improvement Plan, tax increment-based grant application by Harbor Realty Holdings. Could I have a mover?
So moved.
Thank you, Your Worship. Are there any comments or questions? Councillor Noyes?
Thank you, Councillor McDermott. I'm very much in support of this, and I did have an opportunity of talking with Ms. Grummett earlier today. It's a really a good news story. It's nice to see something happening which is going to who's going to gain us about 90 new jobs over the course of 10 years, and seeing a company grow in our town, I think sends a strong message out to the community and other businesses around. And I was really impressed with Ms. Grummett's description of what abatement technologies are doing and what they may have on in their future things, even as it involves COVID, which you wouldn't think the two would be related, but they definitely are. So I'm very much in favor of this.
Your worship?
Yeah, I just want to say that this has been a very interesting project from the beginning when we first, as a council, were approached about the sale of some of the town-owned land in the industrial park off Commerce Parkway. Anyone who knows the harbor name knows that they are quality A individuals, from Blair Harbor Senior, who started harbor manufacturing 60 plus years ago, to the grandson who's primarily responsible for running this operation now. And the opportunity for us to retain this business in Fort Erie and to see it expand and grow, and it is an international business, is really impressive. The building, the elevation that appears in our report, was featured in a recent Financial Times article that showed that elevation and also talked a bit about the background of the company. So it's one of those situations where we've had an opportunity to provide some tax relief for a business for expanding and staying in our community and increasing the number of employees. The extent to which they'll be able to take advantage of this tax incentive program really relies upon how much they fulfill the obligations contained in the application. So the more jobs they create, the more jobs they retain, the larger the assessment growth. Those are all factors that facilitate them being able to take advantage of this. It's really no loss to the community in terms of tax revenues over the 10-year period, because had this company not decided to build and expand in Fort Erie, we wouldn't be getting these tax revenues at all. But not only are we getting eventually the larger tax revenues, but in the meantime, we're getting the benefit of the economic spin-offs from the jobs that will be created, the jobs that will be retained, the number of people who will be working there, who will come to live in Fort Erie, or workers with the company now who will stay in Fort Erie, raise their families here. And so this is, as Councillor Noyes has said, a good news story. And I'm really pleased that we've been able to accommodate them along the line. I know that Carolee Grummett has spent a lot of time with them. I know Kara Dolch has spent a lot of time with them. And I know that their staffs have also spent a lot of time working with this company. I know that our senior staff, Tom Cookett, Kelly Walsh, Jonathan Jansen, have been banging their heads against the wall, dealing with the Ministry of Transportation. And it's a tribute to how strong the walls are in the town hall, that you haven't knocked any of them over. So it's a good news story, and I'm hopeful that council will support this and let Abatement Technologies know that we are fully supportive of what they're doing in our community. Thank you. You're on mute, Chair.
Up on me, Your Worship. It's not a very good night. I just might want to add to this before I call the question. You know, the EDTS, ever since they've come on, has been, really diligent in trying to bring about things like this. And I think the reminder here is, it still is a lesson to be learned by all of us, that if we can get places like Abatement to stay here on a very limited property that we have to keep our eyes on the prize, which is to bring more opportunity to this town. The only way we could do that business-wise is to continue to go after more industrial land in our community. So you can see jobs can be created by what we have, but we're going to need to help a lot more to bring more industry here. So there'll be more opportunity when we start paying attention to that as well. But you're right, there's a lot of people that were involved in this one. All of them are to be commended. And it never ceases to amaze me what we can do. We're getting much younger, we're getting smarter, we're thinking out of the box. And I certainly like seeing that. So all in favor? Opposed, if any? Carried. So we'll move on to EDTS 02-2021, short-term rentals appeals process, information and housekeeping amendments report. Could I get a mover? Councillor Zanko? Comments and questions? Councillor Noyes and then Councillor Lubberts.
Thank you, Councillor McDermott. I did have an opportunity of touching base with Ms. McDermott again in regards to the short-term rentals. And I think there are some more housekeeping things that need to be done in the future. For instance, like I found that some of the wordage in one place we're calling them owners and the other place we're calling them licensees. And I'm thinking they're one and the same. So we should probably, I'm assuming they're one and the same, kind of see if the language follows through the entire report. Because I know that this is some of it's new, some of it's old. The one thing is one of the things that I noticed. The other thing is that when I looked at the demerit points, for instance, under Schedule 3 short-term rentals, and I know again this last year was supposed to be a trial. We were supposed to look at this and revamp it or tighten things up. I see that under septic services, it says operating premises without full private or municipal services, they get 3 demerit points and only a fine of $100. And I know that I got a call this year, I think, about a situation last year where one of the residents along the boulevard, which is on septic, the short-term rental, the neighbor mentioned that he thought there was about 100 people there. And the septic system obviously isn't, it was a reverted house into an Airbnb, is not meant to have 100 people. I think he's probably somewhat exaggerating, but even it's not meant for 50 people. And I'm wondering if somewhere in this guideline or this report, we should have the septic system tied to the number of individuals that can reside in the building. I know that if I wanted to put, let's say another apartment, well, I'm on sewer, but so it doesn't matter. But I know in some cases where somebody wants to add a second apartment or something like that, and they're told that their septic system isn't big enough to accommodate. They would have to put in a second septic bed if they were going to put in a second household. And I'm sure there's got to be some connection between the number of people who live in the house or maybe residing in the house to the size of the septic system. And I don't have the answers to that, but again, and if you're living near one of these short-term rentals and there's a septic problem, the neighbors are definitely put at risk in regards to the health issues because of the leakage, because that's usually what happens when the septic system isn't working properly. And I'm just wondering if somehow in this short-term rental agreement, there should be that it has to be a functioning septic system and somehow geared to the number of people who may reside in the building itself. So in other words, if they're going to advertise that it rents for 20 people, that the septic size of the septic system should be able to deal with the 20 people, not with a normal household of, let's say 5 to 10. I don't know how to do it, but I do know that one of the residents was complaining that the the short-term rental was having septic problems. And there's again, nothing in this guideline that says that if there is a problem with the septic, they have to get an inspection at the beginning. But there's nothing to tell them that, okay, if it malfunctions because of overuse, what happens then? They get $100 fine, or do they get shut down until the problem's fixed?
Okay, Councillor Noyes, before we go to the septic, you had a definition problem. Where was the definition of owner? Where was that located? You're muted.
If you go to page short-term, trying to find it here. It was under definitions. Okay, under licensing. Okay, there's another issue here too. Okay, if you go to the short-term rentals under definition, it refers to the licensee. It means a person who holds a license issued under this part. And that's under 1.0 definition. But when you go to into the body of the report and you go to page 5 of 6, it talks about a person includes an individual, partnership, association, firm, or corporation, and it's talking about where an owner has been imposed demerit points. So in one part of the narrative, you're talking about the owner, but under definition, you're talking about a licensee. I'm just saying that the two need to kind of connect. I think they're one and the same. The other thing too is, okay, and the other thing too is that on that same page on the recommendation number 2, it talks about in the case of a corporation includes a director or officer who not only concurs in the contravention of the bylaw, but then when you go to the, okay, see that. I'm just trying to find it. When you go to part of it, it doesn't talk about a corporation. It just talks about when you go to the licensee, it doesn't comment on a corporation. Again, it should be.
Okay, so let's just deal with that 1 second. Madam Clerk?
Just through you, Chair, if I can just clarify, it sounds like Councillor Noyes is referring to the one housekeeping amendment, which is to the definition of a person, which also includes where it's a corporation, also includes officers and directors, because that's a different bylaw. I'm trying to follow where you are in the report.
If I can comment?
Yes, sure.
I realize that, but the two kind of, one is kind of an appendix to the other, not really an appendix, but Schedule 13 short-term rentals under definition. It says, it talks about a licensee, but then when you go to the actual report, which is, you're right, a different bylaw, but again, it refers to the owner. So I'm just thinking, should there not be some consistency in what we're calling these?
They are two different bylaws, and one is the administrative monetary penalty bylaw, and this is for short-term rentals business licensing.
Yeah, I get that, but we're talking about the same people.
Point of
Anyway.
order, Chair. Point of order.
Your worship.
The definition for owner includes people who don't have a license. So you have to have that distinction in that particular, in the other bylaw where it's defined. You can't just refer to it as licensee because people could be penalized for not having a license if they're the owner.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Councillor Noyes?
I'm I'm gonna let it go. I know what I'm trying to explain, but it's hard to explain when I've got two computers going back and forth.
So let's move on to your second point. Ms. Volch, do you want to handle that one about the septic?
Sure, through you to the councillor. So the septic system approval is handled through the region of Niagara. We don't approve septic systems. It is based on the number of washrooms, the number of bedrooms in a house. It's not based on number of people per se, but based on bedrooms and washrooms. So you heard a couple of options, and I will also defer to Kimberly Grummett, obviously, on discussions on these options, but I'll provide you with a couple. Kimberly does administer the program, so I'll provide the options and perhaps she has further commentary. So you can ask the region to inspect every year and provide documentation. That cost is about $400 for an inspection each year. In terms of workload with the region, I'm not sure how that will play out. The other option is to limit the number of persons per room if there's a septic system. That's another option you can consider. So I'll leave it there, but those are really the parameters. When they're issued a septic system for a building permit, it's just based on number of bedrooms and washrooms. If, for example, they decide to have a wedding or a big birthday party, those things aren't contemplated. It's based on the average use. And I can understand in this case, sometimes the average use is more than anticipated.
Thank you. Ms. Grummett, do you have anything to add to that?
Through you to the councillor, I can just add in that as of right now, we only require a septic inspection from the region at the time of the licensee's first rental application. So it's not something that we are asking for on an annual basis as per the bylaw.
Thank you. Councillor Noyes, you still have the floor.
And I understand that, and I understand it's regional and it's based on the number of bedrooms. But as we know, in the short-term rentals, sometimes every room in the house becomes a bedroom, and there's many people in one residence. The more important point of this, if a neighbor complains that they see that there is leakage coming from, the short-term rental, and that and they can see it, and trust me, many times you can see it or you can smell it. What do we do then? And there's nothing in this bylaw that explains what would be the steps. I know we would probably call the region because they're the ones who do the septic inspection. Okay, so he's the owner of the rental has met the requirements. He had a septic inspection once every 3 years, I think it was. But now there's a problem, and the inspection was 6 months ago. But now he has 50 guests every week. What do we do?
Ms. Dawes?
To the councillor, obviously, if a complaint's lodged where you can smell septic, sometimes you can see bulrushes or odd colored grass in certain locations, things like that, where you might determine a filling septic. If they do lodge a complaint with the town, we would follow up with the region of Niagara. At that point, the region of Niagara would go out and inspect the property to determine if there is in fact a filling septic system. And then they can issue orders to have that system repaired if it is failing.
Thank you. Councillor Noyes, you still have the floor.
And if I can just, and I'm assuming that would happen, but in the meantime, okay, so the person's complaining, our bylaw officer, he's not a septic inspector, but so he can only do what he can do. But the region comes and they inspect it. If there's a problem, the guy says, okay, yeah, I'll get to it. But there's a backlog because of all the new builds going on, and the septic guy is going to come in 3 months. What happens in those 3 months where the septic system is not working properly? Can we shut them down?
Ms. Dodge?
Through you to the councillor, no, not based on the current bylaw that's in place. It would just be up to the region to deal with. Obviously, there is demerit point systems in terms of compliance with certain orders, and that may cause a revocation of the license, which is possible, but just on face value, if they go in, it's failing. You wouldn't be able to pull their license until the orders were issued and demerit points were established.
Councillor Noyes?
And hearing that, and that's why I'm bringing it up, there's nothing really that's in our bylaw right now that we can do, but it can be a very serious health problem if there is leakage and a malfunctioning septic system. So I just think it's something we should probably think about. What can we do if this situation exists? I did have one call about this, and again, hopefully the problem is gone now because it hasn't rented for a year, but someone did bring it to my attention. I think it was a historic, didn't happen the last year, but it did happen to this individual. He was asking me about what happens if it happens again. I really didn't have any answers for him, but it's something I think we should look at to see what we can do.
Anything further?
Nothing further.
Madam Clerk?
If I may offer something, Chair, to the councillor, Ms. Dolce had just mentioned that the region has the ability to issue an order if the septic system fails and needs to be repaired. And under 5.10, it says that no person shall operate a short-term rental with a property standards order or any other order issued by the town or other government agencies. So I'm just wondering, would that be sufficient to pull the license, to revoke it or suspend it? Because you can't operate with an order in place.
Ms. Gold?
True to the clerk. I do agree with you, Ms. Schofield, that actually is there and something we could use. Obviously, we'd have to make sure we were notified. We may have to set up a system in place where we would be notified of that order. But perhaps that can be something, through licensing, that we can make sure that the region notifies us if there's an issue.
Councillor Noyes?
No, that's fine. It does sound like there might be a mechanism for us to deal with that. Thank you.
Welcome. Any more questions? Councillor Lubberts?
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I got a couple of things here, but just to go back to what Councillor Noyes was saying in her issue with the septic tanks. If the region is the agency that's responsible for septic systems, then maybe we should contact the region and ask them for some input, because when the region does their septic inspection, it's my understanding that they go by number of bedrooms, square footage, whatever it is their parameters are, and then they inspect, and then they give you your approval for septic system. But maybe we should let them know that if we get an application for short-term rental, then they need to comment, or we need their input as to, now that this is the case, they comply with the septic tank as far as their bedrooms are concerned, but their occupancy now becomes an issue. And then because it's the septic system, it's the region that has to comment. So maybe we need some help from the region to guide us through this so that they know someone has applied for a short-term rental license in Fort Erie that has a septic system. And so they need to go out there and do an inspection for a short-term rental, not just a standard residential home. And maybe that would help. So just
Okay,
a
just
suggestion.
We'll get an answer for that for you right now. Ms. Grummett?
Through you
I
to the
believe that's part of
councillors.
the application, right?
Sure, we can consult with the region to see if we can sort something out and set up a system, put a system in place. So we can do that and then report back to council.
Yeah, I think that would help, Mr. Chair. And on page 3 of the report, under analysis, I'm a little confused to matters being dealt with by the appeals committee. In the first paragraph there, where the applicant requests referral of the application for issuance or renewal of a license to the committee, I'm assuming that's the appeals committee, instead of the coordinator determining whether or not to issue the new license, the committee would hold a meeting. Well, if you're asking for a license or a renewal, would you not just go to the coordinator? And then the coordinator, only if there's a problem, if the coordinator says, well, no, I'm not going to issue it or I'm not going to renew it, then you go to the appeals committee. I'm confused as to what this here paragraph is all about.
Madam Clerk?
Through you, Chair, to the councillor, you're quite correct. This is the way that the appeals committee was set up in 2005. It's not something new that we're planning to institute, it's what's existing. So what we were trying to do was to outline what the appeal committee would generally do now, and that was a provision. You are correct that if the coordinator also refused to issue or renew, then they could appeal that to the appeal committee as well. But this was something else that was added in 2005, that you could just bypass the coordinator completely and go to the appeal committee and ask them for a meeting to determine whether or not you could be issued a license. I don't know under what circumstances that might be that you would want to do that, but that's the way the bylaw currently reads.
I would think that we would leave it to the coordinator, and then if there's a problem, we'll then let the appeals committee come forward, because to me, the appeals committee is for appeals, not for renewal or for a new license. So if the coordinator sees that you meet all the requirements, then the coordinator will give you a license. But if the coordinator says, no, you don't meet the requirements, now you can appeal. And I get what you're saying, but this here is, when you read the paragraph, you don't know who to apply for a license. Who do you apply with? The committee or the coordinator?
If I may, Chair, through to the councillor, this bylaw was passed back in 2005. I don't know the exact intent of it. I can only tell you what it reads, and it does give the applicant the opportunity to go directly to the committee rather than going to the coordinator. I don't know whether it's because they feel they might be revoked, or I can't answer that.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. Well, maybe Carolee Grummett can take a look at it, read it over, and if you feel there needs to be some changes to simplify it, then you can bring that back to council as well. I personally think it should be simplified.
Point of order, Chair. Isn't that what the report's all about? Is changing this. This is what the report is going to do. It would eliminate this if we adopt the recommendations in the report.
Madam Clerk?
Through you, Chair, for the first part of this report, it is a recommendation report for 2 housekeeping amendments. The rest of it is an information report that is speaking towards the motion that Councillor McDermott has coming forward on April 26th, just to show council the difference between what the appeal committee would be doing, or if that process were to be changed to go under AMPS, and what that would look like. So it's just information in preparation for that motion to be debated on the 26th. We wouldn't be making that change this evening.
Councillor Lubberts?
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's very confusing what I'm reading. And if Carol Lee could take a look at it and simplify it, I think it needs to be simplified.
That good with you, Ms. Grumman? Thank you. Is there any more comments or questions with regarding to this? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed, if any? Carried. Are there new business inquiries? Seeing none, anything on the business status report? Seeing none, I'll hand it right back to you, Your Worship.
Thank you very much, Councillor McDermott. Are there any meetings that anyone wishes to notify us of? Councillor Dubanow.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. The Fort Erie Public Library Board is going to be having a meeting tomorrow at 4 o'clock. It will be done over Zoom.
You're so enthusiastic. Anyone else? Councillor Noyes.
Maybe our first and our last short-term rental appeals hearing this Wednesday at 3:30.
It's April the 21st.
Yes.
Any other meetings that anyone wishes to announce? If not, then Councillor Dubanow, brighten up my day by moving to adjourn.
Yeah, I would be happy to move that we adjourn at 7:17 p.m., Your Worship.
Any questions or comments? All those in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you very much, everyone.